We finally know. SpaceX's Starship Booster 12 gets its last piece. How long till Flight 5? SpaceX reveals plans for the brand new launch site, including the flame trench. SpaceX is in talks to recover the next Starship after splashdown. Will it work? United Launch Alliance has a brand new rocket, but can it compete in a rapidly evolving market? A new study maps the inside of a lunar cave for the first time. Could this be the location of our first real moon base? My name is Felix, including a beard. Welcome to What About It? Let's dive right in. Starship updates. SpaceX's Starship Flight 5 is just around the corner and preparations are only ramping up. After having launched 4 Starships already and each launch performing better than the last, all eyes are on the next flight. Will Flight 5 do it all? Will this ever work at all? One thing is for sure, this is going to be crazy. After the incredible success of Flight 4, SpaceX will attempt to top it and do one of the craziest things ever done in the spaceflight history. They are going to try to catch the world's largest rocket booster out of mid-air with gigantic metal chopsticks. This rocket is a true giant. I've seen multiple of them sitting on the pad. It is like a skyscraper destined for space. Flight 5 is still some time away, but how far are we talking exactly? At the X Takeover event in California, which my friends at Tesla owner Silicon Valley invited me to, Elon Musk himself hinted that the current date would be no earlier than near the end of August or the start of September. So there it is. I haven't booked my flight yet, but you can definitely mark it in your calendars. We are around 1 month out. We are getting close, but is this a realistic estimate or something the spaceflight community likes to call Elon time? How accurate is this time frame? Quite a few people at the X Takeover asked me when that next Starship would fly, and even without hearing Elon's estimate before, mine was the same. Why? A few things still need to be done before SpaceX can launch the world's most powerful rocket for a 5th time. But didn't I say repeatedly that the next booster and ship are ready now? Also true, the reason for another 4 to 6 weeks of waiting is something different. One of the last remaining tests for Starship before a launch is still to be done. I'm of course talking about the full wet dress rehearsal. This is where the ship and booster are stacked and fueled with all systems mimicking what would happen during a real launch, all the way up until engine ignition. This final test still needs to be conducted, given that both the ship and booster have now finished their individual testing regimes. Another thing that is still missing is a launch license and approval from the FAA. However, this typically comes just days before the launch, so don't expect news anytime soon. The elephant in the room, though, is the second launch tower. It is directly connected to that first launch, even though it's not even going to be used for it. But before we talk about that, there is still some very surprising and big news from the FAA. Check this out. A few weeks ago, we knew that SpaceX had applied for an increased launch cadence at Starbase, its only Starship launch site so far. To accommodate this, the FAA needed to perform another environmental assessment. Now we have the first draft, which includes a map of SpaceX's plans at the launch site, so let's take a look. Maps are the best. This enables us to see into Starbase's future. What will SpaceX build? What will it look like? And how will things come together? Let's start with the ground support equipment. It appears SpaceX won't be expanding the horizontal bullet tanks into the space where the vertical tanks used to be.
It's false. No way. Not this time. We created it.
SpaceX recently removed all of them, old and outdated. Instead, the new tanks will be extended in the opposite direction, and SpaceX will likely use that space for other equipment or perhaps leave it empty for now. SpaceX plans to use a new area to build a new air separation plant on the other side of the launch site. An air separ what? It will take air directly from the atmosphere and separate the gases that SpaceX needs. It splits it up into its separate components. In this case, the plant will likely be used for nitrogen and oxygen production. SpaceX heavily utilizes these gases. Oxygen is one of the propellants required to launch a Starship as it burns with methane, and nitrogen is used for cooling and fire suppression. This could save SpaceX quite a bit of money and time and solve one of SpaceX's biggest problems right now: the road. Highway 4 is often overlooked when it comes to Starbase, but given that it is a 2-lane road and the only road connecting Starbase to the outside world, it is extremely important. However, due to the near constant parade of trucks that SpaceX brings down the road to move everything and supply its propellant farms, the road has become damaged over the years and constantly needs repairs. All of what you see at Starbase, all the buildings, all the steel, the concrete, everything, and on top of that, all the fuel needed for every single launch needs to go through Highway 4. That road's been tapping out for years now. With this new air separation plan, SpaceX should be able to import less propellant, reducing the number of trucks needed. Just to put this into perspective, hundreds of tanker trucks are needed to fuel and support a single Starship launch. But SpaceX wants to launch from here several times a day at some point. You see the problem? And it's even good practice for when they need to do something similar on Mars. It is a win-win-win. A smaller adjustment, but one that is important to us, is the expansion of the wall in front of the launch pads. It will be growing to 15 feet or around 5 meters tall. This won't change SpaceX's operations much, but it will move one thing to the other side of that wall. The truck offload stations, they will move behind the wall. We just got rid of those pesky vertical tanks too, so plenty of space. This document is a treasure trove, and it also provides a glimpse at what the new and very different launch mount may look like. But before I tell you about that, we've looked into our channel metrics, and there are over 2 million returning monthly viewers who have not yet subscribed. Help us improve the channel even further by double checking that you've hit that subscribe button so you don't miss our updates. And while you're at it, give us a like and become a wise supporter for exclusive SpaceX updates. With it, you get access to daily Starbase photo galleries, including satellite, aerial, and ground photos of SpaceX's progress, and countless other extras on top. And no matter how much you decide to give, everyone gets the same supporter content and access. You decide what you want to give. Thank you very much. Alright, back to the juicy stuff. New launch mount. This new map shows several possible layouts for Pad B. Thanks to our 3D artist Wrobel, we get a pretty good idea of what this may look like. Variant A would have a launch mount sport 2 symmetrical flame trenches on either side, similar to those used by Europe's Ariane 6 rocket. You can see the mount is positioned in the middle, diagonally to the integration tower, with the flame trench on either side to direct exhaust gases away. Variant B would be that SpaceX builds a pad that is closed on the left and open on the right with one diverter. This would give them the advantage of diverting the exhaust gases and shockwaves away from the planned air separation unit and Highway 4. Variant C would be a pad where the flame trench exits on the long side, facing away from everything. This option would give SpaceX more space to work with on the pad. Infrastructure needed on the pad could be integrated on the left and right, and the flame trench just fires down. I like this last option the best. What do you think? Variant A with the 2 diverters on either side, Variant B with the diverter facing to the right, or Variant C with it blasting away from the pad on the bottom? Remember to let me know in the comments. I do want to discuss this. Before this document, we had a bit of an idea about the shape, as we've seen SpaceX drilling foundation piles into the ground over the past month, but now we at least know that SpaceX is finally departing from the round launch mount. Longtime viewers of Y might remember that at the beginning of the construction phase of the first orbital launch mount, I speculated that it would actually become a water tower. Back then, I argued that a round mount on stilts would make very little sense to me. Now you know why it is not really practical. There is one other thing that is very practical though. Take a look at this. A bad job can cause work-related burnout and work-life interference, affecting both physical and psychological health. That's why finding a fulfilling career is crucial. For me, learning programming was a game changer. It enabled us to share our 24/7 live streams with you, bringing more news and enhancing our coverage. Just like our sponsor this week, 1010, take the leap and find new satisfaction with a job in tech. 1010 offers beginner-friendly online programs with flexible schedules. Plus, they have a get a job or get a refund guarantee. If you don't land a job in the tech within 6 months, 1010 will refund your money back. 1010 provides the chance to work on projects for real business partners along with career preparations and acceleration. You'll find benefit from coaching sessions, tech and HR interview prep, resume and portfolio review, and project-based team competition. 1010 already has over 1,000 alumni, 80% of whom started a bootcamp with zero background in tech. And some graduates are already working for Tesla, Apple, Amazon, Spotify, IBM, and Google Play. Sign up for a free career consultation with a 1010 advisor using the link in the description or scan the QR code. Use my code, which you can find in the description, for 30% off all their programs. Start your journey with 1010 today and unlock your potential. Alright, back to the rockets. So now you are all probably wondering what's going on with all of SpaceX's new prototypes at the build site. What comes after Flight 5? To get to the build site, we have to travel up along State Highway 4. The place is really hard to miss. Once we're at the massive Starship construction site, why don't we begin at the Mega Bay, the home of Flight 5's Super Heavy booster. As you may know, Starship Booster 12 has already had a chance to undergo a static fire campaign, which means it is primed for flight and only needs minor preparations. One of these essential preps is the addition of the hot staging ring. This is an addition to the rocket that was added after Starship Flight 1's unfortunate Rapid Unscheduled Disassembly, or RUD. It acts as the stage separation method for Starship, where its upper stage lights its engines on top of the stack to lift it away. It burns the booster alive. How nice. These holes on the side help divert flames away from the top of the booster during this maneuver, which eases the pain. This type of staging has been used on many rockets, such as Soyuz and the ill-fated N1, but Flight 2 was the first time it was ever used on Starship or a reusable rocket. It's a highly effective maneuver as it increases the amount of time a booster is burning, which in turn increases the mass to orbit, the most important metric for any rocket. So that makes this little metal ring pretty important then, right? Yes, indeed. However, Booster 12 hadn't received this important piece of hardware yet. That is, until now. Recently we saw this very piece of hardware rolling through the build site into the first Mega Bay. This means it will likely be stacked on top of the vehicle very soon if it hasn't happened already. They normally leave this ring off until they absolutely need it, as this leaves more time for teams to work on the top of the vehicle, which has many essential components, such as the grid fin actuators, the avionics, and battery storage. But as I mentioned earlier, Booster 12 has already completed every major testing milestone ahead of Flight 5 and is fully prepped other than some minor work. The next logical step would be rollout ahead of stacking with Ship 30 and a wet dress rehearsal which verifies the readiness of the vehicle as a whole. One down, one to go. However, that leaves the question of how Ship 30 is doing on its way towards flight. As my wonderful wife Stefanie talked about in the last episode, Ship 30 completed a static fire at Massey's test site last week. After the test was completed, the vehicle was rolled straight back to the build site and into Mega Bay 2. This was likely only for quick checks after the test, since oddly the vehicle was then moved over to the rocket garden. That's where SpaceX often stores unneeded vehicles and sometimes vehicles that are simply scrapped. So is Ship 30 simply scrap and SpaceX will just move on to a new vehicle? Definitely not, no need to worry there. They will likely move it over here because it is about ready to roll out. There may be some work left, such as fixing any broken or missing tiles, but it seems the bulk of the work on the ship is practically done. SpaceX can't roll out Ship 30 until Booster 12 is at the launch site, so it appears that the rocket garden is simply just a rest stop before it heads out. On the other hand, however, it could be here longer if Booster 12 isn't as far along as we thought. On the recent X takeover, Elon Musk said that Flight 5 will happen sometime in late August or early September.
From a standpoint of when Starship will be ready, it's probably is about 2 or 3 weeks.
Why, if booster and ship are ready? Why not fly like tomorrow? The answer is rather simple. You can't launch a Starship right next to a massive construction site that is Tower B. Removing all the construction equipment for a launch would cost SpaceX a lot of time. So at least the Tower B stacking will need to be finished before Flight 5. Okay, time for some exciting news. For this we move away from the build site and into the realm of legal approvals. Exciting, I know! The FAA has now submitted a draft for a new tiered environmental assessment, the last of which was approved in 2022. Although the document finds no significant changes to the environmental impact, it calls for an increase in Starship launches per year. I call for that as well. Currently, SpaceX has only received approval for 5 launches a year, but it is now asking to be able to launch up to 25 Starships a year, with the addition of 25 Super Heavy and Starship landings respectively. 25! Currently, they are in a phase where the public can make comments and complaints on the request, which a final decision will follow. I certainly won't complain. This will open up a whole new world of Starship launches and help SpaceX finally bring it online to the degree it wants. Over the past couple of days, SpaceX has been dropping update after update, and this next one actually doesn't have to do with Starship. Instead, this update has to do with SpaceX's Dragon capsule. SpaceX has had a problem over the past few years since it first started launching its new Dragon 2 capsule in 2019. That problem is debris. Oftentimes when people talk about space and debris, the conversation typically stays in space. That's a good thing. However, in this case, the conversation has to do with space debris coming back to Earth. Recently, there have been increasing reports of debris from SpaceX's capsules managing to make it back to Earth. In this case, the debris is from the trunk, which provides power and cooling to the capsule. Huge shout out to morethan3d.com. If you want to have one of these babies, go there. This big piece of equipment is discarded before the capsule re-enters Earth's atmosphere and is left to burn up on re-entry. Except it appears the trunk is a bit more resilient than SpaceX expected. There have been multiple instances of debris coming back and landing on land. Fortunately, there have been no incidents where anyone or anything was hit. This is not only dangerous, but it's not a good look, especially considering SpaceX now owns most of the objects orbiting Earth with its gigantic Starlink constellation. Many of these problems come from Dragon's path of re-entry, as its final destination is either the Atlantic Ocean or the Gulf of Mexico. However, to land there, the trunk needs to be jettisoned before the capsule slows down for re-entry, leaving it to re-enter at an uncontrolled and unpredictable location. Keep in mind that this would have been fine if the trunk had burned up as originally modeled. Because of this, SpaceX has decided to move recovery operations from the East Coast to the West Coast so that any debris that survives re-entry will splash down safely in the Pacific Ocean. So those of you on the West Coast, look out for some Dragons being brought into port. Now that we've discussed all the news of the week regarding SpaceX and their rockets, let's look at arguably their biggest competitor. Or at least it once was. I'm talking about the United Launch Alliance, or ULA, one of the oldest players in the industry today. ULA is a joint venture between Lockheed Martin Space and Boeing Space. From 2006 to 2015, it was the largest space contractor in the United States. In 2015, SpaceX began regularly launching its Falcon 9 rocket and, as such, began picking up more contracts with NASA and the Department of Defense. This meant that ULA had a much lower share of the contracts. One could argue that those Department of Defense launches kept ULA alive and gave them the right to exist. In 2014, ULA was launching nearly 14 rockets a year, which has since tapered down to a mere 3 in 2023. Thankfully for them, a certain United States law requires the Department of Defense to have at least 2 contractors to launch missions. Currently, these 2 are, in fact, SpaceX with its 2 Falcon rockets and ULA with its Atlas V and Delta IV rockets. Since the Delta IV medium retired in 2019 and the heavy variant retired earlier this year, ULA only has 1 rocket left to fulfill these contracts. Meanwhile, SpaceX is pumping out DoD missions like crazy and eating up all the missions that once would have fallen to ULA. This is a real threat to ULA since Atlas V is also on the brink of retirement. In fact, this week Atlas V flew on its final mission for the DoD, launching the USS F-51 payload. Per usual, the mission was flawless and we saw a successful liftoff to fairing separation, followed by the stream ending due to the confidential nature of its payload. The Atlas V still has other contracted missions, but once those are all completed, its life will be over, as ULA is no longer selling flights on this vehicle. So what's next for ULA then? They have been working on a new rocket known as Vulcan Centaur. Announced in 2014, the Vulcan Centaur rocket offers more affordable missions for the DoD, and despite not being as affordable as any SpaceX rockets due to that law I mentioned, Vulcan's future is guaranteed for now. The rocket is still being certified for these launches, which requires 2 successful flights of any payload. The first success was obtained with the launch of the ill-fated Peregrine lander, but the second was delayed due to its payload not being ready, the Dream Chaser spaceplane. That's a problem if the only thing keeping you alive is a certified rocket for Department of Defense launches. Delays have gone so far that ULA has now made the decision to switch Vulcan's second payload to a mass simulator, aka a real heavy block of concrete. Problem fixed, right? Nope, this has serious drawbacks for the program. As more reusable rockets come online for different companies, the DoD may reconsider and choose something a little more affordable, like Blue Origin's New Glenn, another next-gen reusable launcher getting ready for a first flight. ULA's future is still to be seen, but it has contracted flights like the aforementioned Dream Chaser launch, so for now it's not going anywhere just yet. Our last story is about our future on the moon. Researchers reviewing data from the Lunar Reconnaissance Orbiter have found something truly incredible. Get ready to have your mind blown. This is not a crater. Despite the moon being covered in craters, this is not one of them. It is a cave, and it formed when an old lava tube, a channel left by giant masses of lava moving through the upper crust of a young moon, collapsed. We have seen these before on the moon, but after analyzing old data from the Lunar Reconnaissance Orbiter, researchers have been able to map the inside of these caves. These new maps suggest that this opening could lead to a large cave system. Cave system on the moon. Imagine what it must look like in there. But besides looks, why is this so important? The moon has very little protection from the dangers of space, such as radiation and micrometeorites, which could pose a serious threat to astronauts and any long-term settlements on the moon. Being blasted by cosmic radiation and micrometeorites is really bad for your skin. However, it is unlikely that a cave like this will be the first place humanity settles on the moon, given that it does not appear there is any ice in this area compared to the lunar South Pole. But as of now, roughly 200 of these cave entrances have been spotted across the lunar surface, meaning one day some people may call these places their home. And they'll have really soft skin. Thinking of the possibilities in this area is incredible, and I look forward to seeing what humanity does with this newfound information. That's it for today. Remember to smash that like button, subscribe for more awesome content. This is what fuels the algorithm and it helps us immensely. Check out our epic shirts in your favorite Space Nerd store. A link is in the description. And if you want to train your space IQ even further, watch this video next to continue your journey. Thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you again in the next episode. Form another environmental until the absolutely need, so that any debris that I have in my mouth can exit while I'm speaking. Brain fart.